Hello and welcome to the Philippines. Today we're going to talk about real estate in the Philippines, housing, condos, and other factors. Many of you know there's been a little bit of a correction of some areas, a major correction in prices. In some areas it is a buyer's market with many people trying to either rent or unload their properties. There are other people that are not in such a hurry. So we're going to look at a number of different factors. We're going to look at some graphs, some data. It really comes down, in the end, it really comes down to two parties: the seller, the buyer, the renter, the landlord, if they are motivated to make a deal. And depends on what you want. Each of us has different goals, needs, wants, priorities, budgets, and so we're going to try to cover a little bit of all of that in this discussion, and look at some data. Some of it's pertinent, some of it's data is data, and you have to be careful how you use it. Many of you know that I've been in the Philippines for about 6 years, 3 trips. I've spent about 6 years here now. And from early on, I've been, the salesman in the malls, condo salesman would grab me and say, "Come and look at my development right now, condo or subdivision." And I always had a camera with me. I took videos. I start putting them up on my channel. They got more and more and more views, and I do a lot of reviews of condominiums, some housing projects, and so I've got a little bit of insight into what's happening in the real estate market. The Philippines, sometime after the 2008, 2009 worldwide economic downturn, recession, the Philippines has been on a huge growth curve. And until the recent year, about 2020, and when the worldwide economy shut down, locked down the economies, transportation, just really turned economies on their head and livelihoods on their head, and that is the big factor that is driving the market, making it a buyer's market. When you take somebody's livelihood away, they don't have the money to pay the mortgages, to pay the rents, and the utilities. Anyway, they've got to make adjustments. So let's dive into it. This chart shows some of the economic downturns, annual property price increases versus GDP in the Philippines, the various issues we've had over the years. This chart shows the downturn during the Asian financial crisis, 98, 99, and it went up in 2000, 24%. Condominium prices, global financial crisis, and here's another chart of the from Banco Central Filipinas, the country's residential real estate price index chart. How bad is this present recession, depression? Here's a chart showing the global per capita GDP over the years, 30-32, the big crash. The World War II, 45 through 46 recovery area. And then over here at 2020, you can see the 2009 with the global crisis, and then you can see 2020 is minus 6.2%. So pretty serious stuff. Here's a chart showing where the Philippines ranks with its competition in Asia and Southeast Asia. So give you an idea of the, this is square meter prices, premier city centers. So, and this is kind of how the office demand in Metro Manila breaks down. Gaming, 36%. BPO is big in all the major cities of the Philippines. Business processing, outsourcing. And that is, call centers are a good example of that. That is expected to continue to increase and take up office space, but at the same time, there's been a push for work at home. So you have two different areas working. Some businesses are learning that they can continue to have their employees work at home. There are some issues with the internet security that they might have, data security, working from home. There's also the industry data centers. that are expected to grow in this area. Now, gaming is starting to move out pressure from the government that they aren't regulated properly, they aren't paying their taxes properly. Some of the employees, primarily Chinese companies, that come in and set up the POGOs, Philippines offshore gaming organizations, I believe. But they're leaving for a number of different reasons. They're not paying their taxes, not properly registered, and so the government is coming down on some of those. So some of those are leaving, and leaving some of the very prime areas. Over in Mactan, Newtown, a realtor told me that the Chinese company bought one whole tower out of 4 towers, condominium towers. Bought 4 of them and used it for their business and to also house their employees in that tower. So they take up a lot of space. Here is a price rent to ratio comparison for those of you who would be landlords, wondering a little bit about the breakdown on return on investment. This comes from Colliers, is a big international property management company. It's their estimation of where they're saying price correction likely to be felt in the mid-income segment, 3.2 million to 5.99 million, and it's nice to know those breakdowns. You're finding a lot of OFWs, more and more people interested in more of the economic and affordable ranges, and those OFWs who are still have jobs, still investing in those types of properties. They seem to be being bought up faster. The other problem, tens of thousands of OFWs have lost their jobs overseas. They've come back and they're moving back to their home provinces usually. This chart shows the provincial business hubs, and each area, each region, province has its own factors. So you can it's difficult to get pertinent data on areas other than Manila. Most of the data that comes out about Manila from the different Colliers and the various development companies, real estate companies. And you've got to pay a lot of money to get some of the more in-depth type information. Anyway, you've got Ilocos Norte, you've got a big group of cities in the metropolitan Manila area. You have Iloilo City, Bacolod, you have Cebu, of course, Davao City, Dumaguete, and anyway, you've got a little bit. You've got some companies moving, BPO companies, for instance, moving out of the Manila area and moving out into different areas. And I think I just read an article that Iloilo was actually one of the cities that is gaining the most from the movement out of Manila. Overseas Philippine workers, OFWs, their remittances amount to, I think, about 10% of the GDP of the Philippines. So huge impact. I think they're number 4 after India, Mexico, one other country where people go out of the country and send money back into the country. They invest in condominiums and houses. They send money back to their families to invest and to build. And you can see in 2020 they dropped way off drastically. They've recovered a little bit. Another factor, tens of thousands of Filipinos have lost their jobs overseas. They're coming back here. They had invested in properties. They now don't have that income to continue with the mortgages. So you're going to find more and more very motivated rush sale type situations out there. The trick is to find them if that's what you're looking for. But that is going to create and is creating a large drop in prices. Now, I've seen numbers, different areas. Of course, your high-end areas generally don't drop as fast as your medium type areas, where the people, the income level is not as high. Another major factor is the tourism. Pretty much everything is shut down. I think over 40 different airlines have gone out of business. World travel was shut down, and you can see this is a drop in arrivals inbound arrivals into the Philippines just dropped like a rock. And the big demand for these condos, apartments, hotel rooms is tourists coming in, the millions and millions and millions of tourists coming in, and that was just turned off. Most of the numbers that came in 2020 would have been OFWs coming back who have lost their jobs. So you have tens of thousands of properties, hotel rooms, condominiums, townhouses, houses sitting vacant. And as I look around for many months and look at how many lights there are in the different condominiums in Cebu City, for instance, there aren't many lit up. You're seeing a little bit, a few people coming in at Airbnb, going out for a one day to get out of the house or get out of their area. But pretty much everything is sitting vacant. So there's a lot of motivation a lot of people have dropped their rental prices, and others are in the process wanting to sell those properties. I know a couple people that have 4 or 5, 10 different properties, and they just want to get out of the properties, so they're willing to deal. And if you're really interested, contact me. I'll put you in touch with a couple people a couple friends. One guy that I've rented from in the past. And let's look at, I've heard office rents even going for 40% or less as well. Sales fell greatly in quarter 2 2020, and I think probably the additional quarters. All this information is always several months late by the time all the data comes in, gets compiled. And here we go. Luxury housing sales drop. This is Cebu, Philippines. Take-up of high-end residential units may slow down in the short term as property buyers are now putting money on economic housing products. And it may take a bit more time, maybe 5 to 7 years for the luxury market to start buying again. So it might be some deals. Residential units priced over 2.4 million even may suffer delay in terms of sales. Much more the disposal super high in residential portfolios. In Cebu, at least 1,300 housing units remain unsold since the onset of the pandemic year. These are categorized as middle to luxury units. So interesting for many developers are looking at flexible financing and to incentivize buying. Flexible financing, some type of discount, providing high-end appliances, those types of things to get people to buy. So you might be looking at some deals there. But don't forget to ask. Another factor affecting the market, real estate market, and other industries is bank lending. They have, of course, tightened up the requirements generally. So if you have cash, in hand, you've sold some property back in your country, and you may well be able to negotiate a pretty good deal if you find what you're looking for. But there again, do your due diligence. I always recommend using an agent. Lawyer, somebody to make sure all the paperwork, title is clear. Here's a chart of residential rents quarter 4 2019, just to give you an idea. It actually isn't such a broad range. It actually doesn't give you much valuable information in the Metro Manila area by Jones Lang LaSalle Global Property Guide. Anyway, just to give you an idea, here in Cebu City, since I've been living here for about almost 6 years, I've been paying anywhere from 500 to close to 650 pesos per square meter in the places, and my cost per square meter has been larger as I go to the smaller places. I get a better deal the bigger place I get generally, but really depends upon the building that you're in and the unit, how it's furnished. I would expect the next chart like this to show pretty large drop in those prices. I'm going to show you some property sales price information here in a bit, but first I want to go over by property type, but give you an idea of how properties have been increasing over the years. Condominium units saw the strongest year-on-year price increase, 29% in quarter 3 2019 from the year earlier. So they've just been skyrocketing with demand, and now you see this huge drop in demand. So if you have money, could be a really good time to buy in. Single detached, attached houses prices rose a modest 2.45% during the year to quarter 3 2019. Duplex houses price surged 24.8% year on year, quarter 3 2019. Townhouses price rose by 6% over the same period. But with continued global uncertainties and additional blow coming from the deepening crisis, housing market is projected to slow sharply this year as potential home buyers take a wait-and-see approach in the short term. Here's another chart showing the property price increase versus GDP over the years, and charts are great, except they're very poor at giving you specific information. The very generalized information is what you're getting. This chart shows how the business sectors change. This is Metro Manila, but it's much the same for other cities as well. How sectors, economies change over time, very short time actually, and they will continue to change. The POGO industry may decline, the BPO industry will probably increase, and the IT system, the data processing, will probably increase. And here's another quick article about the increase in Manila property prices over the years. And you can stop and read that article if you like to. And the NCR, the National Capital Region, is different than most of the rest of the Philippines. So getting the data for your particular region you're interested in is a little bit more difficult. And a little bit of additional information. The property market took a big hit during the crisis, which resulted in diminished tourist arrivals, travel restrictions, reduced OFW remittances, inflows, unemployment, underemployment would be another one, and business consumer confidence. Vietnam was the only country in the region that saw positive economic growth, while other countries saw major contractions. And then dropping down to the last two paragraphs there, the country experienced the worst economic downturn in 30 years. So it gives you an idea where we're at right now. And this was previous to where we're at right now, which is probably in worst shape. And with prices that fell by double digits. However, there might be an upswing with increased interest among Chinese investors. Now, this is some interesting information. And the Chinese are the main investors in Manila, and 41% of all international sales of the large developer Ayala Land goes to Chinese investors. Analysts believe that this might lead to rush sales purchases among Chinese investors who look for discounted. So people have money. Some of you, obviously, have money and are looking for deals here, Thailand, or other parts of the world. And you should be able to negotiate. Now, if that seller, that landlord, is getting lots of referrals, he might not be as motivated to negotiate. So a lot of times in negotiating, you need to give something up to get something. So keep that in mind. If you can show cash and a quick deal, you might have the advantage. But do your due diligence. Make sure you've got a clear title. Now, last but not least, I think we're going to jump over to Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas, the central bank here in the Philippines. And we're going to go to media and research press release. Residential real estate prices decline in quarter 3 2020. And as I've stated before, I'm sure you're all aware, data that you get is always behind by a quarter or at least several months. And keep in mind that this information is is based entirely on bank loans, so it does not include people coming in and spending cash for properties. So that's a very important point as we look down here. And data is good information, but it is limited, and you don't want to be confused or led astray by it. So anyway, let's go down here. A residential real estate price index. They started this in, I believe, 2016, and this shows their price by area. They've got NCR, which is National Capital Region, Manila metropolitan area primarily. They've got a chart for all of the Philippines, which, once you take an average of everything, that's all you have. You don't have very specific information. And AONC, area outside the NCR. There again, you're generalizing some major areas there that you really want more specific information. But the data is what it is. So let's go down here. Residential property prices in NCR declined by 12.2% relative to a year ago, while prices outside the NCR grew by 6.4%. In NCR, the decrease in prices of condominium units and duplexes outweighed the increase in prices of single detached, attached houses, and townhouses. Meanwhile, prices outside the NCR rose across all types of housing units except for prices of duplexes in the same period. By category of housing units, change in residential property prices is mixed. I'll go down here by the type. So single detached, duplex, townhouse, and condominium. And you can sit and go through those if you would like. There again, it's some general, it's interesting information, but it is generalized a bit. In quarter three, 2020, the number of RRELs granted for all types of new housing units in the nation declined by 43.3% year on year. Those are loans, number of loans granted for housing units. Figure 4, average appraised value of new housing units. NCR dropped. Outside the National Capital Region, stayed relatively steady, may have increased a little bit. This is all new housing units, so it doesn't include the resale type units. Residential type loans by type. Condominiums 48%, single detached 43, townhouses there again, and it gives you a breakdown by some of the regions as well. Central Visayas, that would be Cebu. So if you want to read through additional information, there is information, Bangko Central, Pilipinas, there is a little bit of information there. Sometimes you got to drill deep. Some of that information is difficult to find. Some of it is in on Excel type spreadsheets, so it takes a lot of time to wade your way through that. I, like most of you, have been through a number of recessions. This is a chart of U.S. recessions. I've looked at and reviewed some of the recessions in Europe and Asia as well. I've always been surprised how fast the economy's recovered. This recession is different. Worldwide, long term, there are projections that 2021 later we will see the recovery starting. Other areas of the world, we're all different. Other areas are locking down, more restrictions. I heard one economist or developer suggesting that it will be 2024 before recovery really gets into full swing. But we are where we're at, and each of us has our own goals, our own budgets, our own priorities, our comfort levels, our risk levels that we're willing to take. I've stated before that I've missed a number of opportunities over the years. The 2008 housing downturn, when you could buy one house and get two for free. I'm exaggerating, of course, but there were some very, very good deals. I had one lady begging me to buy her house. She had gotten in over her head. Her partner had bailed on her, and I should have made some moves at that time. There is some risk involved in investing overseas, of course. I will recommend the real estate agent that I have used for some advice, JRC Real Estate, JR Coca Real Estate here in Cebu. He's got offices in Dumaguete as well as Moal Boal. And he's also involved in appraisal of properties. So I've done a number of interviews with him. Many of you know who he is. You've used him for your visa issues. I have heard many good stories, many people who are happy with their purchases, many people who have built homes, they're very happy with their newfound life here in the Philippines, and I've heard a few horror stories as well. So do your due diligence, deal with reputable contractors, people, agents, lawyers, and do your due diligence. Your particular situation, the situation where you're at, what you're interested in, really comes down to that: getting an owner, a landlord, and a buyer, a renter to come to some mutual agreement. So best to have some of that in writing so you understand what you're getting involved in. Anyway, good luck to all of you as you pursue your different options. Hopefully we can all travel again soon, but it doesn't look like it's going to be in the near future. Several months out probably still. Take care, stay safe, and I'll see you next time. Looking forward to your comments.